Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast, How Break Time Pioneered Modern Convenience Loyalty, hosted by Convenience Store News and sponsored by Paytronix. I'm Melissa Kress, Executive Editor of Convenience Store News, and I'll be your host today. We'll get started in a few moments, but first, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. The materials in this webcast have been reviewed by our editorial staff. However, the views of the speakers and the organizations are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of Convenience Store News or its publisher, Ensemble IQ. One of our goals is to make this session as interactive as possible. You can use the Q&A function on the left side of your screen below the presenter headshots to ask questions throughout the webinar. I'll hold these questions until the conclusion of the presentation and then pose them on your behalf. Your identity will remain confidential to the audience. If we don't have time to answer all the questions, we'll follow up with you after the session concludes via email. You can also use this session if you have any technical questions about the webinar itself, and you'll get a direct reply from our webinar producer. At the end of the event, we'll have a webcast evaluation survey. We encourage you to provide feedback using this feature. If you wish to review the webcast or share it with your colleagues, a replay will be available within 2 hours for many platforms. So now, on to our presentation, How Break Time Pioneered Modern Convenience Loyalty, sponsored by Paytronix. With over 5 years of loyalty experience, Break Time is one of the oldest players in the C-store loyalty space. Ditching punch cards for a full-fledged digital loyalty program gained the brands a fiercely loyal customer base and greater revenue. Break Time was one of the first to adopt a tiered reward structure, which is typically seen in restaurants. And within a month of launch, they saw a 25.6% increase in customer spend and continue to see returns. In this webinar, Senior Marketing Manager of Break Time, Anita Bichsel, along with Paytronix Senior Strategist Bonnie Woods, will share how Break Time uses its digital platform to earn and maintain its loyal customers. Join us to learn more about how to structure a loyalty program that fits your brand, how to leverage technology and communications to improve your loyalty program performance, and why you should target low-frequency guests to grow their lifetime value. So now let's meet our panelists. Anita Bichsel is the Senior Manager of Marketing and Merchandising for Break Time Convenience Stores, a division of MFA Oil Company. She is in her 12th year with the company and was one of the creators of Break Time's loyalty program. Under her direction, My Time Rewards achieved 40% penetration within the first 2 years of launch and continues to add value to the bottom line. Bonnie Woods is a senior strategist for Paytronix. She helps C-stores optimize the customer experience with data-driven strategies and serves as a day-to-day point person supporting and advising some of the largest C-store brands on how to optimize the performance of their loyalty programs. In fact, Convenience Store News recently named Bonnie a future leader in convenience for her outstanding work in the industry. And joining us today as moderator is Ryan DeLello, a content specialist for Paytronix. He provides insights to the industry on trends, best practices, and guest engagements. Now on to today's presentation. Please welcome Ryan.
Melissa, thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you all for joining us for this afternoon's webinar, How to Break Time Pioneered Convenience Loyalty. As Melissa mentioned, my name is Ryan DeLello. I'm a content specialist for Paytronix, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. Before we jump in, just a brief overview of the agenda. I'm really excited to introduce Anita Bichsel of Break Time, and we're going to get some insight into who Break Time is and what they sort of bring to the convenience store industry. And then we'll zoom out briefly to talk about loyalty and convenience. I'll share some of the recent trends from our strategy and analytics team. And then we'll zoom back in to talk about Break Time's loyalty program, My Time Rewards. And that discussion will sort of follow a three-prong approach, talking about strategy behind enrollment, Break Time's communications, as well as how they are personalizing the loyalty program experience. And then we'll conclude by looking at some really impressive results from campaigns that they've run over time. So jumping in, Anita, thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to just give you the opportunity at the top of this presentation to tell us a little bit about yourself and about break time. So if you would, please.
Sure. Thank you, Ryan. It's wonderful to be here and talk about one of my favorite topics, loyalty and convenience. And I want to thank everyone who's joined us today, too. As you've heard a couple of times, I'm the Senior Marketing Manager for the Break Time Convenience Store chain. We are a division within MFA Oil Company, which is a farmer-owned cooperative headquartered in Columbia, Missouri. The cooperative was formed in 1929 and got into the convenience store business in 1985. So we've been around for a little while. Today we have 73 locations all across the state of Missouri. We like to think of ourselves as Missouri's favorite convenience store. And many of our features inside the store include we have our own commissary with our Anytime Eat sandwiches. Our coffee is pretty locally and regionally famous, Roasters Cafe. And we've obviously got everything else that every other convenience store has in the way of beverages, snacks, and general merchandise. Some of our locations do have drive-through service, some used more than others. And we like to think that our employees are one of the things that differentiate us from our competition as well.
Awesome, Anita. And I'm going to come back to you shortly, but I just want to briefly justify why we're talking about loyalty today. I think in the, amid supply chain shortages, labor shortages, all of the changing tech within the convenience store industry, loyalty is certainly just one topic among many, but a bit of a dark horse and really a sort of factor that can make the difference for some of the leading brands' guest experiences. So in this slide, I want to just highlight a few of the recent findings within convenience store loyalty. First, we've been tracking in the most recent loyalty report some of the impact we've seen loyalty have on annual revenue and spend by loyalty members, which we see is up 38%. Loyalty is also driving an average increase in fuel visits by 8% and averaging one additional visit compared to a non-loyalty member per day. And then drawing upon some statistics from our friends at NACS, we see that 3/4 of convenience shoppers feel valued by convenience retailers where they are a loyalty member. So communicating that sort of reciprocal value for the guest is really a cornerstone of today's successful loyalty programs. Seeing that also according to NACS, rewards, points, and discounts are really what customers are looking for most when joining a loyalty program. And lastly, that brand affinity is really driving a lot of loyalty innovation today. According to a statistic from Bond, 27% of loyalty members spend more when the brand establishes a positive emotional connection, something I know, Anita, you and I were talking about sort of in the lead up to this presentation about how important that is at break time. So getting back to building a bit more of a profile at break time, Anita, I want to talk about your loyalty program, and maybe the first question to ask here is, what were those early conversations with Paytronix like when you were first thinking about launching a more data-driven loyalty program?
I remember it well. My Time Rewards, the discussion started in 2016 with Paytronix, and we sat down, all of us in a room, to decide what our program should look like. And the one question that kept coming back to us was, how can we drive more visits? We determined that was really what our primary goal was with our loyalty program, was to get more people on our lot and inside our stores. So we actually wanted our loyalty program to be an influencer that could actually pull customers away from our competition. And so obviously we made the assumption that with more visits would come more dollars. And Paytronix shared with us what some of their restaurant clients had been doing with tiered programs. and that concept was really attractive to us. The whole idea of pushing customers from fair to good to great and on up the scale. So we built out our tiers, or rewards levels as we like to call them, with what we believe to be our two primary motivators, free drinks and fuel discounts. So the basis of our program is the more visits you get in the month, the higher your fuel discount and the more free drinks you get. Our program design was put together by a diverse group of people within our company, along with Paytronix, but we had people from our executive team and from marketing, operations, and field management, including store managers. We wanted to make sure that every stakeholder was bought into how our customers should be rewarded. And the end result is a program that we believe is more robust than any other you're going to find in the convenience store space. We don't limit the number of gallons that can be bought with our fuel discounts, and this includes over-the-road truck drivers who really love us. So we actually offer more flexibility than most programs, and those free drinks are a real differentiator.
That's so cool. And, you know, I think one thing to sort of double down on from what you just said is just how much of a cross-team effort this was to get the loyalty program off the ground and fully bought in from, you know, a bunch of different folks with various perspectives and abilities to really operationalize the program. You know, another thing that oh yeah, sorry, go on.
I was going to say the other thing about the structure of the My Time program is that it incentivizes all different types of consumers. So you'll notice that the lowest tier there starts with just one visit a month, and then up to 4 and 10 and beyond. So there's an incentive even for those very low frequency guests to continue visiting at least once a month. But when they get up to 4 and more visits per month, they're increasing the value that they're getting from their program, which builds even more loyalty. So I think the structure here is a very repeatable structure for other brands that are considering tiers that incentivize not just your best guests, but give those lower frequency guests a reasonable level to attain additional value.
Bonnie, yeah, one thing that I've sort of noticed that's really cool about this is that you sort of get within the loyalty program structure itself, you get that sort of transparency around the customer lifetime value, such that even those, you know, low frequency customers who are very new to the program are recognized formally by the structure.
Right, and that's usually where we have the most opportunity for growth. If you think about someone who visits, you know, once a week, we could reasonably expect them to perhaps visit 1.5 or 2 times a week. Someone who's visiting 4 or 5 times a week, it's going to be a lot harder to get them to visit 5 or 6 times a week. So designing a program that's compelling for, you know, sort of that 80-20 rule for 80% of your member base is important, and I think that this program does that really well. We've seen success with this structure and driving additional visits and creating a strong retention metric for existing guests.
Awesome. So with an understanding of how the program is structured and what sets it apart from other brands, I want to move into a conversation about enrollment. And first, Anita, I'm wondering if you can just give us an overview of, you know, what options customers have to enroll and how, you know, the sort of channel breakdown for enrollment.
Sure. Well, our program was built on enrollment with physical cards, and those get registered on a website. That was the only way to go when we introduced it. And the customers do have to register before they can enjoy any of the rewards that they earn. So over the years, we've integrated our loyalty program with our mobile app, and that gave another avenue for registration. And then, of course, we've always been able to register a card by phone for those customers who are not interested in using devices. And believe it or not, there's plenty of those people still out there. And then about a year ago, we introduced cardless registration, and we're able to reach a whole other segment of people who might be turned off by physical cards. So we rely heavily on our associates to promote the enrollment. They're trained to ask every single customer about My Time Rewards, and we offer a 10-cent off per gallon reward as an introductory reward for the first 30 days after you register. So that's a good hook to get people to at least explore the program. And then once they've explored it, we believe they're going to stay with it. But we've pretty much used every form of digital and social to promote our program. We've used radio advertising. We even feature My Time on our fountain cups. And then we also offer exclusive offers and sweepstakes to encourage enrollment. That's a little bit of a FOMO strategy there. So My Time Rewards is never far from our customers' eyes and ears.
Awesome. Bonnie, I want to get you to tell us a little bit about two great stories here around loyalty program enrollment incentives and an interesting learning from a change in the PIN prompt during the pandemic. Do you want to start by telling us about this August registration contest?
Sure. So we advise all of our clients periodically, it doesn't need to be perpetual, but that periodically we're challenging stores to do more than they currently are. And one of the most readily available and most effective ways to do that is to set goals for the number of new registrations, which is effectively just a new member into the program who's taken the time to go online or into the app to enter their name and their phone number and become a registered guest. But we recommend that all brands do this with some regularity, at least a couple times a year, perhaps more frequently than that if you're a new brand who's just launching your program. But what we did last summer was introduce a 2-month contest. It was in, I believe, August and September, where we challenged every single store to increase the number of new registrations by some percentage. So we gave the stores that were low performers a little bit of a higher percentage growth, and the stores that were higher performers a little bit of an easier growth. So if they're in the top, 5%, we might only challenge them to enroll 15 or 20% more new members at that store. And then we measured performance and we awarded the stores that met their goal. So what that allowed us to do is not subsidize existing behavior for stores that were already reaching a particular threshold. It gave us the ability to set a goal specific for each store that challenged that store to increase their membership levels. And it was very successful. We saw a significant increase. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it was significant. It was almost 50%, I believe, increase in new registrations coming in during those contest months. So that just speaks to the importance of making sure you never take your eye off of the enrollment game. It's easy as the program matures to expect that you're going to rely on your existing member base perpetually, but there's a natural element of lapsing with every program. So you constantly need to be bringing new life and new attention to the program, the loyalty program, to encourage new people to join. So I don't know, Anita, if you have anything else to add to that, but we saw great success with that. We typically do see really strong results from these sorts of contests. They're engaging for stores and they have a long-term impact on the member base, certainly if they're run with some frequency.
Well, one thing I will add to that, Bonnie, is that by just having this contest in place, it brought the My Time Rewards program back to top of mind for even our district supervisors. I hadn't heard them talk about the program that much in a while, so that was kind of an ancillary benefit that we had.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing we do, and this is perpetual, this is not a recurring contest or something that comes and goes, but, and Anita, you can speak to this if you like, you're closer to it than I am, but you have a corporate manager incentive structure. So for store managers and district managers, they get, I believe it's quarterly, incentive that is in some regards tied to loyalty. So there's all the other things that are part of creating a bonus structure and incentive structure for management. But we've seen with brands that tie a quarterly or annual bonus to the loyalty performance at their particular store or district, we've seen much better results in loyalty, much better overall loyalty performance when it's an expectation of their function to prioritize loyalty along with everything else they're doing, safety, speed, sales, all of those things, but making loyalty elevated to the extent of those other key initiatives. We've seen that make a significant difference in performance at the store level.
That's great, and both of you are underscoring the point that loyalty needs to be as really an internal, ongoingly an internal, driven initiative. Garnering the support of supervisors and higher ups to keep the program healthy. Bonnie, do you want to tell us a bit as well about the pin prompt story here, or feel free to tap Anita as well?
Sure. So I just give a really quick overview of a couple years ago what happened. So when you visit a break time location, when you check out on the pin pad, there is a prompt for you to enter loyalty, or I believe that the language, Anita, correct me if I'm wrong, says something to the effect of, are you a MyTime member, or are you using your MyTime card today? Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And then they select yes or no.
Okay. So in, I think it was 2020, the product
right when the pandemic hit.
The break time team made the decision to turn that prompt off to reduce customer interactions with physical equipment in store and to reduce the time it took for checkout, all those sorts of things. So that pin pad prompt was turned off, and we immediately saw a significant impact on penetration at the store level. When that pin pad was turned back on, we immediately saw an uptick there. So I think that highlights a few things. One, it highlights how you can use technology to impact the success of your loyalty program, but it also shows how important the store experience, the guest experience at the store level, matters when trying to run a loyalty program. So we can run all the campaigns we want to in the back end. We can set contests with levels for achievement, but if the guest is not having a consistent and thoughtful experience in the store, that can have a significant impact on the engagement level that we're not necessarily seeing from the back end in the office. So I think that, you can certainly elaborate on this if you would like to, but I think that was an unexpected test that we ran into when that was turned off and turned back on, that demonstrated how significant even something as small as a pin pad prompt can have on engagement with loyalty.
Well said, Bonnie. I really don't have anything to add.
Awesome, y'all. So moving from enrollment, I want to talk a bit about communications. Anita, when I was learning more about the break time program, I went to your website, and I found y'all have 3 pages dedicated to explaining the loyalty program, how it works, the rewards available, really, you name it, complete with a frequently asked questions page. Can you tell me a bit about the strategy behind dedicating so much of your website real estate to loyalty program education, if you will?
Sure. Everybody knows that the amount of time that an associate has with a customer inside the convenience store is very brief. And usually that's the briefer the better for the customer. So we knew that there wasn't any way that they were possibly going to be able to explain all of the nuances of our program to every customer that they encountered. There was going to have to be a place that we could push them to learn the details. And so we made sure that we had a place that customers could get the answers to any questions that they might have and kind of educate themselves on how they can make MyTime rewards work best for them. Not all of them take the step to go to the website and learn, but amazingly, a lot of them do as well. So we just felt like that was the best place to put it. And it's a little bit hairy to keep it up to date all the time, but we're in it for the long haul, and we know that that's very important to our MyTime users, especially the new folks.
Neat. Before we move on, I wanted to ask you about one more aspect of your communication strategy, and that is, you mentioned that some loyalty communications go out to just your entire database, including loyalty and non-loyalty members. Has that created a bit of FOMO? Has that contributed at all to driving loyalty registration, just showing people what's on the other side of the fence who maybe aren't part of the loyalty program?
Sure. A good example is that just a couple of weeks ago on St. Patrick's Day, we sent a free Snickers bar to all of our email opt-ins. It was only those people who had opted in to get emails from us that got that reward. And we had a fair amount of customers asking, well, why didn't I get that? Because these people are talking inside the store, did you get the free Snickers? I didn't get the free Snickers. Why did I get the free Snickers? And so, yeah, we've got anecdotal data like that to tell us that there are people out there who understand that there are exclusive benefits to being in the My Time Rewards program.
I love that story. Can't pass up a Snickers bar. The last fork of this loyalty conversation from sort of a strategic standpoint deals with personalization. Anita, I'm wondering, what personalization means to the break time customer experience and how y'all are sort of bringing that to the forefront.
Well, our brand as a whole, we like to think that we're creating a local feel inside every one of our stores. We try to keep it friendly and casual, and we like to give the idea to our customers that we know who they are and we know what they want. And we also try to keep our rewards program very flexible. So when we talk about free drink rewards, our customers don't have to choose either fountain or coffee. They can get whichever one they want. They can get fountain this week and coffee next week. The reward works for both. And so they also get to choose what they want to redeem their points for. They always redeeming points every time they shop with us. They can redeem those points for break time bucks, which can be spent essentially like cash on anything in the store. So we try to tailor the offers to our customers based on the products and categories that we know they shop. And then we also try to give them as much choice as possible to personalize their experience when they're in the store with us.
Awesome. I just want to explain the screenshots on the right of our audience screen. Those are grabs I took from the Break Time My Time Rewards app. On the left, I just think it's pretty neat that you can select your favorite store, and from there, all of the contact info streams in, as well as gas prices. And then furthest to the right, I registered for the Break Time My Time Rewards program, and I can see all of the rewards that sort of are down the road for me. So just good motivation and sort of transparency around the loyalty program there. Anita and Bonnie, anything else that you want to add from the personalization discussion, or should we jump into some campaign results?
I think that's the other side of the coin. So if we're going to talk about that next, then we can hold the conversation on personalization of campaigns until then. Cool.
For all of y'all following along at home saying, this strategy is great, where are the hard numbers? Now is your time. The first campaign that I want to talk about is this Free Fuel for a Year sweepstakes campaign. And for those of you who are maybe unfamiliar with how to run a sweepstakes and what they're sort of most optimized for, Bonnie, can you give us some background on sweepstakes campaigns?
Sure. So sweepstakes can obviously be in many forms and fashions, but at their core for loyalty, they really do three things. Primarily, they're a registration driver. So if you're not a member of loyalty and there's a contest for Free Fuel for a Year that's only eligible for loyalty customers, that would be an incentive to join loyalty if you haven't been compelled by the other benefits that are published. So that's number one. Number two is that if the contest is structured in a way that awards every guest and allows them to enter either through a visit or through, we'll talk about points, but through spending points that encourages guests to visit you more frequently, either because they're not visiting your competition, if it's a very compelling reward, or simply an increase in frequency to participate in this sweepstakes itself. And then the third, which I alluded to, is specifically for the My Time program. The way that guests could enter this program is through purchasing entries with redeeming points to enter into the contest. So that had a third benefit of reducing the point liability for guests that had large point balances. So we saw a significant increase in the number of customers, number of accounts, we call them in the Paytronix platform, who were redeeming points for entries into the sweepstakes, and the number of points that were being spent specifically for the sweepstakes grew as a share of the overall redemptions within the catalog. So that had the third benefit of getting people to use those points on a very predictable cost benefit that the break time team could build into their budget. There was no unknown in terms of how much this was going to cost from an expense perspective. It's easy to forecast how much free fuel for a year would cost, and the number of entries doesn't affect that cost. So it's really the three trifold benefits there of getting people to join, increasing frequency of guests that are already part of the program, as well as reducing point liability if you have the option of building this into a catalog where guests could redeem points for entries.
Okay, and Anita, can you give us some background on how the campaign worked, and just high level what goals you were looking to accomplish? And I'm sure some of this will overlap with the background Bonnie just provided.
I'll try not to, but I'll try not to repeat, is what I mean. So our goal with this sweepstakes was, number one, we were really just trying to give our customers something to feel good about. Whenever gas prices went so high last year, nobody feels good about paying that much to fill up their vehicle with gas. So we just wanted to give them something to make them feel better about it. And so this was a 6-week sweepstakes we put together. It was pretty simple. It was offered only to My Time Rewards users, and they received an entry every time they purchased at least 10 gallons of fuel. And so that was an automatic entry that we were able to negotiate through the Paytronix system. They also had the option of redeeming points, like Bonnie said, for entries. And the primary goal of the sweepstakes was to foster some good feelings with our customers who were feeling that pinch. But a nice side benefit was that we had over 5,000 users that redeemed points for entries. So from a business standpoint, the sweepstakes was a good way to prune that points liability, if you will, with very little cost to us. The payout for our sweepstakes and prizes was about $3,700, but we reduced our points liability by nearly $9,000. And in the end, we had one grand prize winner and 6 first prize winners who got a $200 gift card, and some pretty decent publicity out of it. So overall, it was a very good success, which we will probably be repeating this year again.
Very cool. Sounds like a win-win for your customers and brand alike. I want to move into another campaign here, which falls under the sort of, I don't know, Bonnie, would the term be like a nudge campaign? Can you give us a bit of background around the sort of design elements behind this?
Sure. I'm sure everyone in the audience has received these at some point from a program that they're a part of, but a nudge campaign in how it relates to a tiered program is basically just an email or a push message, however you choose to send it, that encourages you to achieve the next tier. So in the My Time program, this is obviously a core piece of encouraging people to move up in tiers, is letting them know that they're close. So what we did, I might be getting ahead of myself here a bit, but what we did is test target versus control, whether or not these campaigns are making an impact on the number of customers who are reaching that next tier, and whether or not we are increasing the number of total visits amongst people who receive this campaign, the nudge campaign, versus those who don't. So we took the population, let's say it's 1,000 people. We held out a portion of those. I don't recall the exact amount, but let's say 25%. So we had 2,500 people not receive any message. 7,500 people received the message that they typically would. And then we measured the difference in target versus control, how many achieved that tier that we were trying to push them to, and we measured the total visits amongst those two populations. And we saw a higher share, not unexpectedly, of guests who are in the target group reach that next tier. And overall, just that message alone drove 3.2% visit lift. So it's a very inexpensive way to encourage guests to achieve what you've already committed to giving them, which is all of the published benefits as part of the tier. And we're proving here that it does actually make a difference. It's not driving 20% visit lift like a more targeted campaign would do to change guest behavior at a one-to-one level. But this is part of the core program. It runs every month, and it's driving measurable change in guest behavior. So if you do set up a tiered system like this, if you're considering having this tier structure, implementing this tier structure, we absolutely recommend that you include nudge campaigns every month to guests who are approaching that next tier threshold, frankly, just to remind them that they are close, but also to encourage them to make that 1 or 2 additional visits to reach that tier threshold.
Got it. Now, Bonnie, I've got one clarifying question, because if I understand the My Time Rewards program, guests also need to keep up with a certain cadence to maintain their reward level. Would the nudge campaign also serve that purpose as well?
Right. So every month you requalify. Some programs you hit a tier. Airlines are an example where you hit a tier and you're in that tier for a long time. In the C-store world, typically we would recommend it's on a shorter cadence, but typically it's monthly, and a guest would need to maintain that visit threshold for the month to qualify for the following month. So Anita, I'm sure you could go into a little more detail here, but generally that's the structure that we recommend. So you would be encouraging guests to reach that next tier or requalify every month.
Got it.
Yeah, you said that well, Bonnie, and it also serves as a reminder that they have to hit it every month, because even some people who've been in the program for years, they forget and they call us and they're like, "Why do I have the fuel discount anymore?" Well, it's because you didn't reach 4 visits last month. Oh, I forgot I had to do that. So anyway, it's always good to keep the message in front of them.
Mm-hmm. And I think what's unique about the My Time program, it's worth noting that most of the value, not all of the value, there's a points currency outside of tiers, but there's a lot of value in each of these tiers. If you can see on your screen how much value there is for certainly the all-time and big-time tiers or reward levels there's a lot of incentive for guests to continue visiting. The lighter that the tiers are, the less compelling they are. I think that goes without saying. But this particular structure has worked really well in giving incremental value, and we mentioned this earlier, even to guests who are lower frequency. So there's a significant incentive even for those 2, 3, 4 visit per month guests to continue visiting, to maintain that status, and potentially even get up to a higher tier.
Now, Yael, I think this has sort of come to light organically through our conversation, but I'm wondering whether Anita or Bonnie or both of you want to speak to why it's so critical to target low-frequency guests, especially with this sort of tiered structure in place.
I can take that, and Anita, you can elaborate if you like. It's easier to change frequency with lower frequency guests. If you have somebody, and I think I mentioned this analogy earlier, but if you have someone who visits every day, it's going to be really hard to get them to visit more than once per day. But if you visit, theoretically a couple times a month, there's a good chance that those customers are shopping your competition. So there's a larger pool of visits to pull from to bring them over to your brand. So we can have a larger impact on frequency and overall visits amongst guests that don't visit as much. And they tend to be a larger share of your customer base too.
And Anita, I imagine, on your team, the thinking pretty much aligns there. I thought that's an interesting point from Bonnie about those lower frequency guests sort of shopping around with the competition, and that's why you really need to double down with your communications there.
Absolutely. And to Bonnie's point, the start time level is our largest population. And to move them, and some of them, may not even realize that all they have to do is visit one more time a month, and they're going to get much better rewards. And so being able to move them up to that next level it really is the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. We want them, even if we take them from 3 to 4, with how large that population is, that's a very big deal.
Definitely, and I'm sure Bonnie can corroborate this, but we've definitely found among all of our customers that getting their guests to that 4th visit is really key for bringing them into the loyalty program and sort of cementing them within the customer lifetime journey. I want to move on to another campaign here, Hunt Brothers Pizza. This was a lapsed guest campaign. Bonnie, what is a lapsed guest campaign?
So there's a couple types. This specifically refers to lapsed on a category. So these are, again, campaigns we would recommend every C-store do. This is specific for the break time stores. Obviously, the Hunt Brothers Pizza is available. This is not, for example, a Pepsi product, but lapsed campaigns at the category level are oftentimes supported by vendors. So in this case, this was guests who had purchased a Hunt Brothers Pizza product within a certain time frame, and then for a period of time they did not purchase that item. So we're trying to get them back into the category. They're still active, so they're visiting break time locations, but they've stopped buying a category we know they used to purchase. So this campaign could be very easily replicated for a vendor product like a Pepsi or a Coke product or Lay's or what have you. But the idea here is that you're using a small amount of funding to get people back into a category that they used to purchase, and then hopefully retain a large number of those customers after they've redeemed that one free one. You might need to nurture them back into the category, but retain them once you've brought them back to the category. So a lot of customers will do, I say customers, my customers, clients, will run campaigns that are sponsored in part or fully by vendors. So vendors have an incentive to get people purchasing their particular product. That's good for them, but it's also good for you as a brand if you're getting people back into a category that they've ceased purchasing. So in this example, we sent out this campaign. It goes monthly. It's a recurring, or bi-monthly. It's a recurring campain. I'll let Anita speak to some of the results that we've seen, but it's been consistently a very strong performer in getting people back into a high margin category, which is the food service.
Yeah, we did.
Gotcha.
And the offer that we're sending to these customers is not even a free offer, but it's a very valuable offer. These Hunt Brothers calls them a hunk of pizza because it's a quarter of a pizza. It's not really a slice. It's bigger than a slice, but they typically retail for $3.89. We're sending them a hunk of pizza for $1. And so the redemption levels that we've had have been very high, and even more important to us because our primary goal with this campaign is to get people back into the groove of buying pizza on a regular basis. We've had over 50% of the people who redeem this $1 hunk, then they keep buying pizza after that. So for us, that's a huge mover of the needle, so to speak.
Yeah, so that number
Brilliant.
that Anita gave is pretty substantial. So once somebody redeems this low-cost offer, $1 or whatever the specific offer is, it's low cost. Once somebody redeems that, we're seeing over 50% of those specific guests come back and purchase the item again after we've given them a discount on it. And those were guests who'd stopped purchasing that category. That's pretty significant. The other thing I would add there, and we've recommended this with our clients as well, is that you have some sort of bounce back or re-nurture program in place that automatically puts them into a flow where they're re-nurtured back into the category. Specifically with this campaign, we send redeemers an offer for a whole pie. So this is obviously very specific to pizza, but the idea there is that if you redeem for a slice, can we then get you to also purchase a whole pizza? And we see a pretty strong redemption rate amongst those guests once we send them an additional offer. And I believe that that's an even lower value offer, but we know they're interested in the category. We've gotten them to purchase at least one small product, and we've seen pretty strong results in getting them to then purchase the larger product, which is a whole pie. So if using this concept for other lapsed category campaigns, With vendor products, you might do a lighter offer as a bounce back, or maybe you could do bonus points for a particular item if you have a points structure. So you could give them a free one, and then it could be purchase 2 and earn 100 bonus points. So it doesn't have to be as rich, but something to keep them interested in that category so you don't have just a one-time redemption and then the guest drops off again.
Wow, very cool. An extremely effective campaign, and it sounds like the results that we're seeing here, just relative to itself, are only exponential. Looking at the customer lifetime value and maybe pizza purchases over time. I want to look at one last campaign. Oh, yeah, go on.
I'm just going to add to that, and I suppose it's true for the next slide as well, is that they're set it and forget it campaigns. So the recurring campaigns themselves can be set up once, and then they run on their own, and we can analyze them at whatever frequency we choose. But they don't require a heavy lift every month. Once you set them up, certainly you should be measuring whether they're effective versus a control group or pre-post, but they run themselves. So there's a very low lift from an operational standpoint. There's no additional creative that needs to be done. These are recurring campaigns that run at the frequency at which we set.
Great, thank you for the clarification, Bonnie. That's good to know. Moving on to one last campaign discussion here, sort of the crux of personalization within the guest experience, one-to-one campaigns. I'm seeing that break time works with both win-back and visit challenges. Bonnie, you sort of touched on win-back campaigns a little bit in the last slide, but if you want to give us some understanding of how those campaigns work along with visit challenges.
Sure. Win-back is distinct from the lapsed category campaigns that we just looked at. Win-back refers to guests who stopped visiting altogether. And without getting too deep into the model behind the score itself, each of your guests is assigned a visit cadence. When they start to slip, we assign a date at which we're concerned that we might be losing them as a customer. And then if they don't meet that date, if they don't visit when we expect them to, and it's been another cycle or two in which we haven't seen them, they progress even further into what we consider a likely to have lapsed state, where they're 70 to 80% likely to have already lapsed. So at that point, we certainly recommend, and what the My Time program is doing, is sending offers to these guests to try to encourage them to come back to your store. So we have 2 touch points running today with the break time program. The first is at a lapsing state, which is at 30-40% likely to lapse. So they're not certainly lapsed, but they're late. They're not visiting at the frequency that we used to see them visit at. At that level, we're sending 5 cents off per gallon. For the likely to have lapsed level, which, as I said, is more up in the 80-70% range likely to have lapsed, we're sending them a richer offer of 10 cents off per gallon. We're holding out a control group for all of these so we can measure their performance versus a target group. And we're seeing pretty good visit lift, 7%, I think is what's written there, 7-8%, and even higher gallons lift and unique guest lift. So we're seeing a pretty good, consistent stream of guests who are responding to this campaign who we otherwise likely would have lost.
Awesome. And then similarly along the visit challenge line there, what's the sort of governing design of the visit challenge along with the results we've seen?
So a one-to-one visit challenge is distinct from a typical visit challenge in that it looks at every single account in your database and it predicts how many times we think that guest is going to visit next week. And in a one-to-one visit challenge, we say, let's say we think you're going to visit 2 times. We will challenge you to visit 3 times, 1 incremental time. And just like the other one, we'll hold out a control group. So we'll measure how many visits, how many guests, how much spend in the target group there was compared to the control group. And again, this is specific for each guest, so it reduces the chance that we're cannibalizing behavior that the guest was already going to exhibit. So in this case, we're only challenging guests to visit more than we would expect them to. And we've run a few of these. They're, again, something we recommend for a lot of clients to do. But we've ran several instances of this, and we've seen, the numbers are there on the screen, but almost 6% visit lift and 4% spend lift. That would be in-store spend lift. So pretty modest results there for a campaign that is not terribly difficult to get off the ground and is customized for each of the guests who receive it.
And Anita, looking at this sort of more strategically, what do the one-to-one campaigns mean to the break time guest engagement, experience as a whole?
Well, I think they just add to the brand message that we try to convey inside our stores. Like I said earlier, we like to create a local feel for our customers, so they know that we want to know what they want and we want to give it to them. And so these one-to-one campaigns fit right in with this engagement strategy by presenting offers and rewards to customers based on their habits and their personal preferences, right down to their visit frequency.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both so much for this discussion today. It was so insightful between the loyalty program strategy and the results from all these campaigns. Melissa, I will hand things back over to you. I think we've got some time for questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Ryan. And thank you, Anita and Bonnie. This is, I was joking earlier for our audience's sake that everyone wants to know the secret sauce, and break time definitely has it going on. There's some really good information that hopefully our retail listeners can take away and try to work on at their own stores. So we do have time for a few questions. Before we jump into those, though, I just want to remind everyone to fill out the evaluation survey that'll automatically appear on your screen at the end of the event. So now on to a couple questions. So for the tiered loyalty program, does a visit require in-store or can it be fuel only?
Our program gives a visit for fuel and or in-store visit. I mean, however, when you visit a store and you buy fuel and you go in store, it doesn't give you two visits. That's one. We've got you can't get multiple visits on what we call consecutive transactions. So if there's 30 or 40 minutes that pass in between a fuel purchase and then an in-store visit down the road, you can get multiple visits. But to that end, we give visits for both types of transactions.
Okay. Right. So if I'm stopping on my way to work in the morning and picking up coffee, it's a visit. And if I'm stopping on the way home and getting gas, that's a separate visit because it's maybe 8 hours. Okay. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. So now this is probably a question for both you and Bonnie. How many hours per week would you say is dedicated to loyalty management? And at break time, aside from you, do you have a person on the staff that's specific to working on this? Is it a whole team?
I wish we had someone that was specific to loyalty. Because to answer that question, whatever the number might be, it isn't enough. I wish we had more time to spend with it. But I would say overall, between all of the team members that touch the loyalty program, it's probably something like 20 hours a week. And a good portion of that is spent on customer service.
Okay.
But again,
go ahead, Bonnie. Sorry.
My experience is I work with all different types of brands, all different types of clients. Some are on the leaner side, I will say, where there's one in some cases or two dedicated folks who work either specifically with loyalty or loyalty plus marketing in a larger sense. Some other brands I've worked with have upwards of 6 or 8 folks touching loyalty on a week-to-week basis. So it really depends on your specific brand. We've definitely seen that if you're able to, and Anita, we were talking about this earlier, there's a lot that goes into running a loyalty program beyond just what we've talked about today. There's the operations side, there's getting offers secured from vendors, and the more support, the better, generally speaking. So that varies widely, but I think, Anita, your structure is working well with your team.
And how long did it take for break time to implement the new the loyalty program, the tiered program?
You mean how long from conception to launch? Is that what the question is?
I believe so, yes.
I think that I could safely say it was about 6 months. However, at that time, Paytronix didn't have many convenience store customers. We were one of the early adopters with Paytronix from a convenience store side, and so there were some wrinkles that wouldn't exist today that had to be worked out and probably took a little bit longer. I think that obviously as they have grown with the industry, their technology has grown, and it's a much slicker technology today than what we launched with back in 2017.
Right, because you're trying to take a restaurant program and bring it to the convenience store space.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, well, I'll give you one example. When we launched, we had a piece of hardware that had to be installed in every single store. That piece of hardware is gone now, and everything is cloud-based.
Okay, so you're the test ones.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. You get ahead of the pack, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're almost out of time. We do have some more questions, but we will follow up with you after the webinar to make sure you get the answers that you're looking for. Also, you can always reach out to me. I'm Melissa Kress, Convenience Store News, and it's mkress@ensembleiq.com, and I can pass the questions along. But I do want to just thank all of you, Anita, Bonnie, and Ryan, for your amazing presentation today. So much good information and insights. So, and I also want to thank you, our audience, for attending our webinar, How Break Time Pioneered Modern Convenience Loyalty, sponsored by Paytronix. So everyone, have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week.